Hello everyone, welcome to Game Junk Prototype episode 61, recording on May 13th, 2021. My name is Frank.
My name is Sean.
And my name's Andrew.
And we're going to take some Discord questions today. Yet another slow news week, and we'll get into a few questions from our listeners and talk some Resident Evil Village, which Sean has played and I have completed. As of today. So let's get into Resident Evil Village right now. Sean, you've put a little time in there. Did you complete Resident Evil 7?
No, I jumped. I've still been playing it. Jumped into Village just so we could have a bit of a discussion about it. But now I'm actually enjoying Village quite a bit and kind of just want to keep playing it. So we'll see.
Fair enough. So why don't you start? What do you think of Village so far?
Well, so interesting question that you kind of posed to me earlier this week, where you were like,
I posed an interesting question?
Yeah, well, you were like, are you really a Resident Evil fan?
Oh, yeah, I really gave you... This is taking off on the film noir thing from Film Drunk, but like, you talk about how much you love Resident Evil, but you haven't finished one in the last... Of the 4 that came out, including one that's in VR, that's also your thing. And who knows where we're going with this, Sean?
Well, I don't... To be fair, I don't know that I've ever said I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I've just always said I'm a Resident Evil 4 fan, which I think is the case. I like 5 quite a bit too, which is pretty similar. And
I just remember one of my first memories that we shared together was playing through Resident Evil 5 co-op. And I don't know, I must have gotten the vibe somewhere that you love Resident Evil. But to be fair, you do love co-op games.
That I do, yeah.
So that could have been more of a motivating factor, and you have always said you love Resident Evil 4. So I fully admit that could be me projecting things based on what I've heard.
And I believe Sean and I did play through some Resident Evil 6 and then had to stop. But
yeah, and I wasn't as much a fan of that one.
I remember everyone hating it when it came out. I'm like, this is not as bad as people say, and I never finished it. I didn't know it was co-op. We got to do it.
Yeah,
it's the only Resident Evil game I haven't beaten.
I'd be curious to revisit it, but
Code Veronica. I have not beaten Code Veronica of the classic ones.
So anyway, Resident Evil 4 is definitely where I got on board, and I've played a bit of the original, and I think maybe a bit of the original part 2, but they were frustrating games, and I think that is still kind of the case, and survival horror as a whole, I'm not that big of a fan of because they are frustrating in a lot of ways, right? Like, I'm down for horror in games, and I like some of these games have really interesting stories and narrative things going on, but the gameplay is built in a way, and I get it. Some people love this aspect of it, but where resources are scarce, same with The Last of Us. I have some issues with stuff like that in The Last of Us. But resources are scarce. Your player is usually slow moving, and you get surrounded by enemies, and it gets frustrating sometimes. So I don't love those elements of survival horror. But anyway, Resident Evil 4 I thought was the perfect mix of survival horror and some action-y type gameplay mechanics, and I think they bring that back with Resident Evil Village. I haven't played, I put maybe 2 hours in, and a lot of it was just story stuff. So I can't say I've spent a ton of time with the actual gameplay and combat mechanics. But from what I've seen, it does feel a lot more like you have a bit of room to take your time and aim, and you just move a lot faster, which I love. And I really like the setting, that sort of like culty kind of weird village thing that's going on. I'm a fan of that. I'm getting the sense that the story overall is probably a bit of a mess and probably won't make a lot of sense by the end, which I gotta say with part 7, I was actually enjoying the story quite a bit and thought it was holding together pretty well. But yeah, I'm liking it quite a bit. And like I said, I kind of just want to keep playing it at this point. I think it looks great. And yeah, it's about all I have to say right now.
What system are you playing it on?
PS5.
All right, I'm playing on PS4, just so I can transfer the save and potentially get auto pop trophies at some point. So, I am a next gen gamer.
Seems like a weird choice, but okay.
I play him on the previous gen by choice, which is sad. But we'll get into a trophy story in a second. But I gotta disagree with one thing, Sean. With Last of Us and Resident Evil, I do not think resources are scarce in these games.
Well, okay.
On normal and casual difficulties, you can pretty much, use the weapons to a satisfying level, like where you're not hoarding ammo and they're giving you ammo at lots of different points and health. Definitely on harder difficulties, that's a thing, but I think the game lets you play in your own style.
I think that's a fair point, but to me, there's still a mindset of you have to conserve, which I don't like. Like I hate feeling like if I take a few extra shots to take an enemy down, I'm thinking, should I just reload from the last save? Like I hate thinking that. And you're right. On normal, usually you don't have to, so maybe I should just let it go. But, that's how I think.
Yeah. So I beat the game today. I absolutely love Resident Evil Village. I think it might be my favorite Resident Evil game. I disagree with the story comment, and any Resident Evil game, I think the story is ridiculous and secondary and completely forgettable. And it is literally just a vehicle or device for insanely overscaled bosses that are like absolutely crazy looking, make no sense, but are exciting, like landmark AAA gameplay. And this Resident Evil delivers on that level in every way, possibly better than ever. Like there's a lot of bosses, and they are all really good. And I would think, if anything, they took budget stuff and said, well, based on install base for VR, we're going to take that money and put it towards more bosses and graphical fidelity, which I'm kind of sucks. And maybe they're going to work on VR stuff after the fact, since there's no PSVR right now. But I think it was a great decision, because to get a trophy at the end, you had to open up all the character models in the bonus menus afterwards. And the character models, I'm glad that there was that trophy, because I looked through those character models. They are insanely good. They look amazing. And the bosses, I've never been more impressed with bosses in a Resident Evil game, to my recollection. We got to talk. Yeah, I'll mention it right now, Sean. So, fan favorite, friend of the show, Jay Cheel, who was on last week, pointed out to Sean and I that there was some plagiarism stuff going around with Resident Evil, that a director of, was it Army of Frankenstein?
Frankenstein's Army, I believe.
Frankenstein's Army. There's a boss that they say, like, design-wise is almost completely ripped off from that movie.
Now I haven't looked at the images for this yet, because I didn't really want to spoil it for myself, but I have also heard there's other characters that are similar as well. So it's not just the one, I don't think.
But this one is really specific. And where I could defend general borrowing of stuff was, the reason why I like this Resident Evil the best is because it feels heavily influenced by classic horror. So you've got werewolves, kind of vampire-esque stuff, zombies, some other stuff that I won't mention right here, not that it's that big of a deal, but it feels like kind of infused with everything that makes classic horror great. And you're kind of, each area towards the end has a different vibe that's influenced by horror movies, and some gothic horror, some body horror. Like, there's lots of body horror stuff in the game in general. I know people are talking about his hands and Like, that is a thing in Resident Evil 7 and 8 for sure. And they get into that a bit at the end of the story, I would say. But yeah, I definitely see this is a very unique design that's being criticized, and it is very similar. So I don't know if anyone's actually weighed in and saying it is homage to Frankenstein's Army, but it seems like there's a strong case there for lifting. Not to say I didn't love the design. Whoever came up with it, I think it's really cool. And yeah, I love this game. Like, and I've talked about this the last 2 years, playing the 2 Remake HD, 3 Remake HD, 7. They're short games. They're usually about 6 to 10 hours if you rush through them. And it's just great moment after great moment. It's everything I want games to be that they've gotten away from, and they just crush it. And it's like, I just want to play it again. I really enjoy playing through it, like a great, well-paced movie. And that you rewatch. I think Village does an amazing job of that. I think the Village setting, like Sean said, is amazing. There's like the castle that's been pushed. I liked the stuff in the castle, but it's not that much, to be honest. It's not a huge part of the game. But Resident Evil 7 was not that strong in the last third of the game. I really like the vibe and location for the first 2 acts. But this game consistently throughout is amazing. And if anything, it feels the closest to, which I'm sure people don't like, to Resident Evil 5. It's much, especially in the last third, it is heavy action. You are killing a lot of stuff. And I was joking with Sean when we were playing A Way Out that, you know, it's all this ideas for co-op gameplay. How do you share things? And then the most fun is when you just shoot stuff together. Like, shooting is just, there's a reason why shooting is a fun mechanic. And I could see people interpreting like, oh, do you just like killing stuff? It's not. Shooting is the most tried and true action mechanic there is. You're aiming. There's a satisfaction to aiming. And like the feedback mechanisms, like, it is fun. And you can elaborate on it and do things. There's a reason why every game adds a bow and arrow these days, and or projectiles to what used to be just brawler or action games, because aiming is an amazing mechanic and it is immensely satisfying. That's why first-person shooters became so popular. So I think this game has lots of great aiming mechanics and ideas. But overall, I won't get into many more specifics. Just super fun game. Looks amazing. Lighting's fantastic. I guess the one big shift from Resident Evil 7, considering this continues that story and is first person, of course, is the idea that, or in 7, I really like the objects and items being extremely well hidden. Like, they were underneath stuff, and there was a whole stimulant system to like reveal things. And when I would use those stimulants, I'd be like, wow, I missed a lot of stuff. Like, there's a lot of well hidden stuff in this game, which I thought was really good for a first person version of Resident Evil. This game is switched. It's no longer that anymore. It goes back to Resident Evil 3 HD and I think 2 HD, where each room is either blue or red. And if you find everything in a room, it turns blue. If you've missed stuff, it stays red. I like that as well. I think both are really good.
Yeah, I like that.
And the idea of the red room, they actually make it kind of interesting in that this is also from Resident Evil 5. If you remember shooting jewels in Resident Evil 5 for money, they hide jewels really well in some of these levels. And like, some rooms are easy. You find everything, it turns blue. And then other ones I'd be like, I'm looking everywhere and I cannot find what's missing. And it's like, okay, you have to look really hard to find like a glimmer somewhere, shoot that down and get a treasure. So I think that stuff's good. I love the Duke, the design of the Duke, the shopkeeper. And
spook.
I like there's no, inventory boxes or crates that are traditionally in these games, which, there
was a few early on.
No, but you can't like store your stuff and get it back later. You either have to sell it back to the Duke or buy it back. And that's the replacement for that, which I kind of like. People were all up in arms about the cooking things and shooting animals, and they're like, it's since when does Resident Evil Breath of the Wild and you can cook stuff? It's not that at all. You find they're hidden things, they're collectibles basically that lead to permanent buffs or power-ups in the game, and I like that system as well. I thought that was pretty fun. So absolutely love the game. Probably it's between this and Kaze for Game of the Year for me right now. I would give it a 4.75, like between a 4.5 and a 5 for me. Absolutely loved just blowing through this game in 5 days. I played it a lot. And I will tell you, the moment I stopped, I told Sean this already, I was following a collectibles guide. Everyone roll your eyes, groan, do whatever you want to do. I was using it, and I was like I was probably 70%, 60% through the game, and I was just double checking. Did I miss something here? Something seems off. And I looked, and I'm like, I missed the first one in the game because I reloaded a checkpoint to get a different trophy. And I'm like, oh my God, I deserve this. This is the worst.
Your own private hell.
I turned the game off immediately. I'm like, I don't even want to look at this right now. I hate my life. I hate myself. And then I got to the end of the game and I got the trophy anyway. So it didn't matter at all. I kept following that guide in the hopes that, maybe I'll just have to get the first one at the beginning of the game again. I didn't even have to do that. I had it all. And it just was the way it was presenting it because it changes locations. Trophy guides. Yeah, baby. But that was a fun, emotional roller coaster that, if you're following a trophy guide, which everyone should be doing that loves trophies, if you find out something like that, don't abandon it. Don't give up and be like, oh, what's the point? Stick to it. You never know. You're already pot committed. Finish up that trophy guide. Get those collectibles. So that was the best. The happiest I've been in months when that trophy popped at the end. And I didn't miss a single goddamn collectible in this game. And the trophy guide, the guides at Power Picks are amazing. There's no spoilers. They do a really good job of like just preparing you for when you need to be aware of things. And if you want to look for it yourself, you can. Love that website. Anyway, that's all I have to say about Resident Evil 8. It's amazing. Huck, you got this thing on reserve yet from the library?
Of course.
Nice.
I'm probably never going to play it, though. Actually, when you were talking about the map, I was thinking about how great the original Doom would be with a similar map.
Oh, yeah.
So that you don't have to just like mindlessly click everything in a level.
It's interesting that you bring up Doom, an area towards the end of the game, heavy, for me anyway, from what I remember, Doom 3 vibes.
Oh, yeah?
It's like a factory, and the lighting seems... reminded me of Doom.
Hopefully a lot
3.
better.
Yeah, I don't know.
Doom
Anyone
3 lighting
heard about Doom 3 VR? Didn't that come out a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I haven't read any reviews or anything, but I saw that it came out.
I never beat Doom 3, but I kind of want to go back and play it. Doom is also a really solid core design that obviously Tim Rogers has made me appreciate even more.
Yeah.
But Resident Evil Village, we had a Discord question about it. Let me just see here. I suppose initial thoughts from Joe Schwaff. I have no idea. I suppose initial thoughts on Resident Evil Village is a gimme, and it is. And if you're debating whether or not to get it, and you like these games, get it. It is awesome. I think the reviews are actually pretty like below what I would expect, because I feel like 7 was around 8s or 7s, and I think it's way better than 7 for me. But I thought 7 was great too.
Yeah, I hadn't read any reviews, but I just caught a few headlines here and there, and it seemed like it was sort of like mixed, the reception. So I was like, I mean, based on what I've played so far, it's a little surprising. I thought maybe it was just like a story thing, or people don't like that they're straying from what they think Resident Evil should be. But
I could see the 5 stuff, like it's really actiony at the end of the game, being a thing people are complaining about. I haven't read many of the reviews, but
and this
it,
one
man. It was awesome.
This one and 7 are both fully first person, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, like I said with 7, they've done a great job to me of taking what makes Resident Evil and changing it to first person.
Yeah, and just to touch on the hands thing. Like, I haven't really been keeping up. I've just been seeing memes popping up and stuff. Like, I assume the whole reason that his hands are getting so, like, abused and mangled is because it's a first-person game. That's the only way you can show damage or some sort of gruesome effects to the main player is with the hands, right?
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, when you look at the player models that get unlocked at the end, the main character is headless. Like, they don't even do any of that stuff. So, which makes sense. Like this review right here, I'm not calling them out. It's just the first one I'm kind of seeing that's low. I don't know the website. Stiviver. Resident Evil Village is an enjoyable horror experience that embraces the franchise's first-person approach and refines a few of its mechanics along the way. It's ultimately held back by a sloppy storyline, two-dimensional characters, and bizarre design choices. What Resident Evil game doesn't have two-dimensional characters and sloppy story? Like, are we talking about the same franchise? That's what defines this series. Like, that is not what this game is about at all. It's about cool bosses, weapons, locations, enemies, atmosphere. Like, let's get real. And bizarre design choices, I don't know what those are. I honestly don't know what would be a bizarre design choice. Everything felt like Resident Evil to me, swapping out storage boxes for the shop, which is basically the same thing if you want to exchange economies in the game.
One thing I was going to ask you about, like, early on they introduced this mechanic of being able to barricade doors, which is kind of interesting, but I was like thinking, like, does this actually get used a lot in the game?
Not really. It's just like it's more, I think, for the opening where it's like the village, establishing the village, which makes sense to me.
Right.
Like, to get you in the mindset of, the people who live in the village, and that's who you're starting to connect with at the beginning of the game. So it makes sense more for story to me. I don't think it's intended to be like an amazing mechanic. You use it pretty sparingly. But I loved this game. Loved it. All right, ready to move on to some Discord questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. First question from You've Been Gregged. I have a question for the boys. I'm in a game rut. I'm not even sure what I want to play at the moment or even if I want to play. Do you guys ever experience video game malaise? Huck, you want to go first? You haven't had a chance to chime in yet.
Sure, I definitely do. I definitely experience this. Usually I find it happens usually after I finish a game. And then I don't really want to touch anything to do with the game for a while afterwards. And I just kind of want to do something completely different away from games. So that's obviously a different experience than most regular gamers would have. But also sometimes there's just ruts in the games that are coming out and nothing is really interesting you. You may not feel like playing anything older. So there's just nothing that kind of interests you. So you just kind of take a break from games. And I think that's totally fine. And I think it's probably good. You probably come back refreshed whenever you do feel like playing games. And I have a similar thing with movies. I only watch like 2 movies a year, and when I watch a movie, it's great. But I don't have enough time to watch everything and do all the other stuff I need to do. So movies for me take a backseat to games, and sometimes video games need to take a backseat to other stuff in life. So yeah, I feel this for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like, I find for me, it's more, I mean, on the one hand, I'm the dabbler, right? So, like, if I'm feeling like I don't want to play something in particular, I usually have like 5 other things, or maybe that's even a reason why I dabble with other stuff a lot. But then if I don't feel like playing games at all,
You play mobile games.
yeah, I still feel like there's more like things you can find that are in the gaming space. I just feel like there's such a crazy range of experiences you can have. Now, I mean, granted, if you're only into first-person shooters, you get bored of first-person shooters, yeah, then you probably want to take a break. But I just feel like there's so much stuff.
Sean, this is an observation, not a criticism, so please take it as such. Since we started doing Game Junk Weekly, I feel like you feel obligated to have something to talk about. Like, do you think that is making you play more and not have malaise that you previously might have had? Where it's like, I feel like you want to have something that you play to talk about, and that encourages you to dabble even more. And I think also because your kids now play a lot of video games, if you didn't have those two factors, would you be maybe experiencing a bit more of this malaise? Or maybe it's just motivation.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a factor. Like, yeah, I like to have something to talk about, and sometimes it's just an excuse to try something out. But yeah, I think for me, it was, I don't know if I would ever describe it as like a malaise. To me, it was like I would just go through stretches where it's like I'm busy, I forget about games, and then it's just not even in my mind. And then I'll go like 4 months and I've barely played a game. So now doing the show every week, that's, and being in lockdown, that's not happening right now. But that's more the case. It's just kind of like what Huck said, like other stuff comes up and then you forget about games for a while. But I would say the bigger problem too is more just like I can't choose what to play sometimes, but that's a whole
Yeah, I definitely have the choosing thing a lot. We were talking about it before the show, but I've experienced video game malaise in the past. I can honestly say for the past 2 to 3 years, I have never been as passionate or motivated to play games. I absolutely love the current state of video games, and there is no shortage of stuff for me to play. There's always something I'm like, okay, what's next? And I just love playing games lately. I cannot get enough of it, especially in the summer when I have more time. So, yeah, it hasn't been a problem lately. Like Sean said, choosing what to play is a much bigger problem, but
I have that problem for sure. I have probably like 40 games installed from Steam, and I never touch any of them because I sit there and like looking at the list, and then half an hour goes by and I haven't clicked on anything, and I've wasted my time, and then I don't have enough time to play anything. So it's the downfall.
And say what you want about trophies, but at least having that as like, oh, this is an attainable platinum or whatever, is like, it motivates me to play that game rather than bouncing back and forth and finishing it and seeing everything a game has to offer. And I think that is a good thing in the long run, even if, people think it's bogging me down. I disagree. It is a motivating factor. Okay, next question from Kirkbride. Now that you've had some time with the DualSense as a game designer, how do you see yourself implementing it into future games? And we should also mention Sony has finally announced new colors, Galaxy-inspired colors for the PlayStation 5 DualSense. Midnight Black and is it Cosmic Red or some bullshit? I don't know. I hate these stupid names. Which I will probably order both. Cosmic Red, it was Cosmic Red. And I was saying to Sean and Huck today, like, this black controller, it has me wanting a black PlayStation 5 more than anything in the world. Like, it looks so good. Give me these plates, official PlayStation plates, to make my console black. I need it.
Yeah.
It looks
I'm
so
sure you
good.
do.
It looks so good.
So,
Go ahead, Sean.
well, so the DualSense question, I was thinking about this actually today playing Resident Evil. One thought, and I don't know if anybody's done this yet, but with the haptic stuff on the triggers, you could do something where it actually feels like you're pulling a trigger. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense for like a game where they do it in Resident Evil.
Call of Duty does it.
Oh, okay.
I've talked about it. Like, I hate it. Like, it just makes my finger tired.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for a game where you're like shooting all the time, but it could be interesting for like a Western with a 6-shooter or something, maybe. Could kind of work.
I mean, you could design a gun specific to the story of the game. Like, it doesn't have to be a traditional gun. It could be, you know, you could invent an idea for a gun that matches the haptic feedback, and Returnal kind of does that to some degree. But yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Sean and I were talking before the show. I think the take here is it's interesting, and like I think I've read about what game was talking about the haptic feedback. It might have been stuff about Horizon, about like walking through the grass in stealth and feeling like the grass. And I know people talked about raindrops hitting in games and stuff like that. And I see that. I don't know if it's that amazing to me personally. I still feel like there will be some. I like it. Don't get me wrong. And when it works, it improves the game. But I can't think of anything where it's like, oh, now we can do this. Because if there was obvious stuff like that, it would be happening already. It's like, okay, this is kind of fun stuff. It's kind of like the light bar and the stuff on the DualShock 4, where it's like, okay, it's a nice enhancement. I don't think it's like a huge. It's not like Rumble. That was a complete game changer. It's kind of, yeah, it's nice. I can live without it, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope someone or game designers start to come up with ideas that are like critical.
Yeah, so I don't have that much experience with it, but I know that Astro's Playroom, the team that did that, experimented with a ton of different stuff, and they spent, I don't know, at least probably 2 years, I would say, trying to come up just with kind of interesting haptic feedback stuff. And I know Valve was working on it with their controller that they had. So obviously they put some time trying to figure out a use for it, and it never went anywhere. So I don't really have high hopes that there'll be a lot of super interesting things that come out of it, kind of like Frank was saying. But, you know, some people might find a use for it, but the other problem is that the only people that really will have the time to invest in it are Sony first-party developers, because they're the only ones who it really makes sense for. Because why would I waste all that time when I have to ship on Switch and, you know, all the other consoles? So
Switch has HD Rumble. They were the pioneers here. Like, everyone is still talking about HD Rumble.
Everyone is, yeah.
I'm just like, that was the same thing, right? It was the same idea. So
yeah,
at least Sony has delivered on that to some degree, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of an experiential thing. I just started thinking about gameplay, like what you can do gameplay wise, and I cannot think of too much stuff that would be, and maybe somebody will come up with some crazy stuff, but like the only other thing I was thinking, like, could they do something with a racing game where it's like you're kind of feeling how much grip you have on the road or something, like if it's slippery out?
Yeah, I think so. I know there's some of this feedback on triggers on Xbox games that, you know, the resistance or analog, I guess that's more like analog pressing of the pedals and stuff like that. But I don't use it, but I'm sure people who like racing games do. The only thing I can think of is to tie in some new stuff. Was rumors or specs on the PS VR 2, and that I could see haptic being a much bigger influencing factor, which the controllers are supposed to have, possibly the headset as well. Now it's like, oh, okay, if you're feeling rumble on the headset at certain points and it's more specific to your hands with the controller, yeah, I could see that enhancing a VR experience to an even greater degree.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're like reaching down to pet something like an animal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You get to feel the fur kind of thing. That would be cool.
Feel the fur, buddy.
Well, like even like the PS Move, you usually use the trigger to pick things up. So just having like resistance on that to feel like you have something in your hand could be cool, I guess.
Yeah. Or if you were holding something that was moving or whatever, you could do stuff like that. But I think that's where we'll start to see this stuff really apply itself, personally. Okay, this next one. Am I missing who this is from? Oh, from Dustin. Why is it that Frank is so exacting when it comes to film presentation, going so far as to buy multiple different TVs and 4K players in an attempt to chase the perfect picture, but is so hesitant to get into PC gaming? PC gaming seems like it would offer him the very best of the best. For a guy who spends multiple thousands on televisions, I feel like he's definitely the type that would appreciate the better performance that high-end gaming, PC gaming can achieve. I'm happy to hear Half-Life Alyx is at least getting him to dip his toes into the platform. Dude's already got a sweet gaming chair anyway. Love the show, guys. Keep it up.
It's the same reason he plays Resident Evil 8 on the old console instead of the new console.
Trophies are definitely a factor, but I do like playing on a big TV. I know that's the thing people often say, like,
yeah, you spent all the money on your TV. So.
Yeah. And I know people, well, you can hook up your PC to a TV. I don't know if I like that idea all that much. I know there's streaming versions of that as well, but ultimately it's convenience. Like, I cannot build a PC right now. Parts are super expensive and hard to find. They change constantly. And very often when I do play a PC game, there are issues like compatibility with drivers and stuff like that. I like knowing I'm going to be able to play a game, knowing what I'm going to get. I can sacrifice the ultimate graphical fidelity. I was watching a video on YouTube about, like, can people even notice the difference with ray tracing and stuff like that? And I admit I'm not that visually adept to be able to tell some of the differences between things. Like, I get much more impact out of great effects or lighting than I do about having the best technical setup. And I know that part of that is there, like the highest graphic mode has better effects and lighting and shadows, but it's still pretty good on current gen consoles. So unless there was like a huge gap, which I personally don't see, or I'm incapable of seeing, as Jay might say, which I'm glad. Ignorance is bliss. I love console gaming.
I think you would notice it, especially on games that are less high budget, that don't have as much time to spend to light, especially interiors. You'd also notice it if you paid closer attention to like the reflections and the shadows and stuff. You would notice it. Like, I remember I was saying last week about how I played Control on the Series X, and like you could really notice the like shadows and the reflections that are from things that are off screen, whereas in a traditional rendered game that would not be possible. So that kind of stuff like really helps with the immersion of the environment. And that's the thing, when a thing becomes more immersive, you probably don't notice it. You probably like your brain probably just fills in the gaps that it's there when you're playing it originally, and you notice when weird things happen, whereas now those weird things are not happening, so you don't even notice them.
I could see that, but like you said, I clearly don't care that much about that stuff. Like, I don't even notice it, and I never cared that much about pop-in in games, like background pop-in, and like I think there were breakdown videos of the first Infamous, of like, if you actually look like how bad some low detail stuff looks in the background, I don't notice that stuff. So my blinders are on, so to speak, when I'm in a game, and I'm not trying to look for flaws or amazing things about it. I'm just kind of taking the whole thing in, for better or for worse. That's how I play games. So I'm good for now. I still really want to play Half-Life Alyx though.
Yeah, I think they've done studies on that with like eye tracking, and I think they've found that basically like you stare at your character and then like everything around is just like a blur. Like, you rarely ever do that. Your eyes might dart up to like the UI every once in a while, but people in the general case, don't really look at the surrounding area. So you don't need to really put that much effort into like making sure everything is super crisp and loaded properly.
All those environment artists are just crying right now that you said that.
Yeah, and then there's other people, specifically in the gaming industry, that will, they sit down to play a game and all they do is like look at everything super close. And I'm like, I'm glad I don't want to do that. What game Returnal was actually the first game in a while where just atmosphere wise, I did not run. Like I would walk sometimes and kind of take in the level, which is pretty rare for me. I'm just kind of, I know what I'm doing, and I like to move fast pretty much. But that game, I was like, I walked, which is extremely rare for me to do. But I think that game looks amazing. So yeah, still want to get a PC. I don't know when that is going to happen. I've got cash ready to go pretty much. I've decided I will spend the money even if I never use it. It will happen. Just can't get one.
I must say, on your the driver thing, I haven't had a problem with drivers in a while. As long as you just keep like your NVIDIA drivers and stuff up to date, I've never had a problem in the
I definitely have
past like
issues
10 years.
right now, and this is an older computer it isn't as like mainstream in terms of its video card and sound card, and it's like I have audio issues all the time with games, and like Oculus won't even recognize. It keeps telling me to update the drivers for the video cards. I do. It still won't recognize it. Anyway,
just get NVIDIA.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I just need to buy something standard, pretty much, and
yeah.
Which is like if you don't know that, like that's frustrating, and I probably wouldn't have known that until I had this computer. Anyway, next, Eric Zan just finished Marvel's Avengers 2020 and saw Sean Dwyer in the credits. Is this Dwyer guy?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of Sean Dwyers in the world, believe it or not. But I was going to mention that there was this doppelganger in the game industry, like since I started at Silicon Knights, where on Moby Games, which I haven't checked in a while, I should actually double check this, but whenever I looked up my credits would be mixed up with this other guy who used to work at like LucasArts, I think. And so it might be that guy. It could be another Sean Dwyer, but it is not me. Yeah, when I look up Sean Dwyer on Moby Games right now, so it's got my credits, and then it's also got Rise of the Tomb Raider, some Star Wars games, BioShock 2.
Prolific.
Yeah, and Marvel's Avengers. So yeah, there you go.
Nice. Hot Black Desiato. Do any of you dudes build little games on the side on your own? Sean, do you see yourself returning to the games industry?
Well, I can answer the second part of that. I don't really see myself getting into the industry, quote unquote, again. I'm kind of fine with where I am now, but there's still a part of me that really itches to try and do something small, something indie. I mean, both Huck and Frank have now had the experience of sort of working on an indie game with a small team, and it's kind of like they had a lot of creative input, and they kind of obviously put a ton of work into it, but they came out with something at the end that feels like their own. And I never really had that. I always just worked on big projects with big teams where I didn't feel like I had a huge amount of input. So I would like to at least do that once, just to see what happens, but I don't know. I don't know if it'll happen.
Yeah, work-wise, I've been pretty busy, but I've been getting the itch lately to make something again. We'll see if that happens. I'm all talk, but I have been feeling the urge to do that more than ever recently.
Yeah, and with me, I mean, yeah, I did do Citizens of Earth, and before that, I mean, when we were at Silicon Knights, I was building stuff on my own and like working with Ryan from Eden Industries on other little things. But since I've kind of started Equilibrium, I haven't had that much time. I mean, now projects I work on are like for the company, so it's not really like on the side. It's going to be,
yeah.
For the company. And so I'm not really working on anything on the side ever. But like if I have downtimes between contracts, I'll work on a project that is like technically me working, right? But it's not really something super serious. Every project I have is definitely in pre-production, and it's kind of just fiddling around with ideas. But yeah, so I definitely still do that. It's just not really on the side anymore. It's kind of for the company in general.
All right, one more question. Baby G, given the option to play a game on normal or casual mode, if all progression and experience is equal, would you choose to play on normal or casual? This assumes there are no trophies that require playing on normal. I'll let you guys go first.
I mean, it's an interesting question. I almost always opt for normal. Probably better question for me personally would be casual versus like hard. If I had to choose between those two, what would I do? But if normal's there, I almost always will just choose normal because I feel like somehow I'm not getting the intended vision of the developers. It's not calibrated exactly the experience they want you to have. But, you know, that being said, maybe there are a few cases where I should just say, what the hell? I just want to see the story of this game and blow through it. Like, I'll try casual, and maybe I should do that more often.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would say it also would depend on the type of game. If it was maybe like an RPG with a lot of grinding that I didn't really want to do, I would probably opt for casual. But if it was more of a skill-based game that just had some story, I think I would definitely go normal in that case. So, because obviously part of that game is the gameplay. I would say casual would be for if it's like really story heavy with maybe some frustrating bits here and there that maybe isn't as fun. I would opt for casual, but almost kind of the same with Sean. I would definitely pick normal, and definitely more interesting would be hard versus casual, where I find it would be kind of the hard might be too frustrating, and I might just want to get through it.
Yeah, I would always go normal in any game, really, unless I know the question said this specifically, but if there is, you can do hard the first time for trophies, I will do that. But I will always do normal and scale up or down based on the gameplay, which I have done, especially when I replay a game. Like God of War, the first time I played it on normal for platinuming it, I found like a lot of stuff super frustratingly difficult in that game. And I'm like, I'm just going to play it on casual, do everything in the game, and I thought that was fine. So it depends how much I like the game too. Like I will often replay on a harder difficulty as well, which for Final Fantasy VII Remake was better. So, but you really can't play that game on hard to start. So it's not a fun answer, but really depends on the game. But in general, always normal. All right, that's it for the questions. Thanks for sending them in. Where can people, if they want to join the Discord, do that?
I put it on every YouTube video.
Okay.
It's in the description.
We do, you can go to gamejunkpodcast.com as well. It goes to like sort of a landing page within Film Junk, and I think the Discord link is in there as well.
Cool. Let's get into what we played. I have nothing else besides Resident Evil. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah.
No, I'll throw it over to Huck because I just played Resident Evil.
Okay. I played a little bit more of Kaze and the Wild Masks. I probably about 80% of the way through. I think that's what my percentage is. I'm in the 4th area, which I believe is the last one. Is that correct? And I'm probably about halfway through, or maybe a little less. And I've been collecting every gem as I go and trying to do it all. It's really fun. I've never really, 100%ed a platforming game, I think, ever. And this one, I'm definitely going to do it. It's really a treat to go through this game. Then I also played the game, I think when Graham was on, you guys were talking about it, Manifold Garden. I tried that game. I don't think I got very far. I felt like I played for a while, but I was looking at a walkthrough, and I was like 20 minutes into this guy's walkthrough, so I didn't get very far. I just got to like the dark world for the first time, or whatever you call it, the flip world. But I was enjoying it. I don't know if you guys were talking about how it's kind of weird and hard to understand. I don't know if that happens later on, but I was liking the like recursive style of traveling through the world. And maybe because you guys had talked about it, and I've actually watched a couple of this guy's, the William Shear, I think is how you pronounce his last name, his Twitch streams of the game. So I kind of had an idea of like what he was doing beforehand. I was able to kind of just jump right in and kind of know what to do. It didn't take much thing, but I was enjoying it. I thought it was pretty fun. I thought the puzzles were pretty unique in certain aspects, like how you flip the world a whole bunch of times and stuff. And then the last thing I played was a game on Apple Arcade called Mosaic, and it's basically like a down with capitalism type game, and I think it's technically on Steam listed as like a walking simulator, which is probably true. Adventure game, walking simulator. It's a smaller game. I don't know how how long it is. It says 2 to 3 hours here, but in the game they have they have a cell phone, and in the phone you have an app that's like one of the clicker games, and I got freaking addicted to this like clicker game inside of the game. Just like trying to level up and click in and get all the points. I'm like, oh god, what am I doing with my life playing this stupid thing? And yeah, so I probably played the clicker game like more than I played the actual game, but I don't know how long I don't know how far along I am, I should say, but I would estimate I'm probably about 3/4 of the way through the game, because they keep giving you these reminders that you keep coming in late for work. That's the whole thing. You are an office cog, and you wake up every morning and you kind of do the same thing. You tidy your hair, you straighten your tie, you brush your teeth, and you kind of then start hallucinating that you have this goldfish that is talking to you, and then you can either like throw it in the trash or take it with you as you leave for the day, and then you basically walk out and you
Jerry Maguire reference there.
I don't know. So then you basically walk to your office every day, but you kind of go a different route every time. And then there's like these little kind of like psychedelic moments where you kind of trip and like, I don't know, I guess have some sort of episode or whatever you want to call it.
Tripping, dude.
Yeah. And then you get to the office, and then there's this little mini game where it's kind of hard to describe, but you basically have these like sources, these like nodes at the bottom of the screen that produce these little blips, and these blips like build the next block up, and you kind of have to make a connection from the bottom to the top, and there's certain things that kind of get in your way, and you basically are just clicking up all the time and maybe going left and right and maybe stopping this like virus. You're supposed to be in some sort of database or something, and then basically the little blips follow the track. It's very confusing how I'm describing it, but it's a pretty fun little mini game, and you know, they try to introduce little mechanics that don't really work that well. Overall, I don't know if I would recommend the game, but it might be fun. It's because it's so short. Sean, you might like it. It's like a little, you know, kind of a mindfuck game.
It does sound kind of like something I would like. I don't even think I had heard of this one, so.
Yeah, I had it on my Steam wish list, I think, for a couple years, and then I saw that it was on Apple Arcade, so I played it there. And I think that's all I've been playing.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks for listening. Check us out on youtube.com/GameJunk. And you can find Sean on Twitter at FilmJunk, and Huck on Twitter at MyAngryCommute or EquilibriumSys. And next week, who knows? Let's hope something happens. I'm thinking we're at the point where everyone is going to save stuff till like E3 time.
Yeah.
So it could be pretty dry. We shall see. But hopefully I'm wrong. Anyway, thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye-bye.